Hi, everyone. It's Ashley from the Library for the Blind and Print Disabled. I'm so excited to have you here with us tonight. We are so fortunate. We made a connection with a new partner called Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope, otherwise known as the Cash Campaign. And their whole mission, get this, their whole mission is to help you have a brighter financial future. That's it. That is their entire mission. And like boiled down to a nutshell, okay, to a soundbite, but which it's really cool. So we have them come, and their tonight is Earn It, Plan It, Keep It, and they are going to teach us all about, making that plan and savings and all that fun stuff. And our host tonight, our guest host, is Christina. Now, I met Christina a couple weeks ago. We had a nice little chat, and she is ready to go. So Christina, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm going to mute myself and turn my camera off. If you need something, just holler at me.
I will. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for having me and for joining me for Earn It, Plan It, Keep It. As Ashley said, my name is Christina Figueroa, and I'm a program associate for financial capability with Cash Campaign. Again, like Ashley said, CASH stands for Creating Assets, Savings, and Hope. Before we start, I want to tell you a little bit more about us. So Cash Campaign of Maryland is a nonprofit organization that promotes economic advancement for low to moderate income individuals and families in Baltimore and across Maryland. You can visit our website, which is cashmd, cashmd.org for more information. I want to tell you a little bit about what we offer. So we have direct service programs. We build organizational and field capacity. We lead policy and advocacy initiatives, all to strengthen family economic stability. Direct service programs include free tax preparation, financial coaching, which is free one-on-one virtual, either video calls or phone, financial coaching. Benefits screening, we screen up to 22 different public benefits outside of Social Security Administration and veteran benefits. Maryland Cash Academy, which has a lot of webinars and some in-person classes held by partners and cash staff. Bank on Maryland, which can provide you information about safe, low cost, and functional accounts with banks and credit unions, as well as some financial fitness fairs. We just had Money Power Day a few weeks ago. Again, if you want any information, you can contact me. My information will be available at the end of the presentation, but you can also go to our website, which is cashmd.org. So to get started, our objectives for today are examining money values and habits and learning how they affect your decision-making, setting goals, specifically smart financial goal setting, and creating spending plans and budgets. So the key point for this presentation, again, is that making a plan for your dollars is really going to ensure that your money is spent on what is most important to you. And it can also really help you reach those financial goals that you have. So the first thing I'd like to do, this is chat one icebreaker. Feel free, we don't have too many folks on here, so feel free to unmute yourself if you would like to speak, or you can add something to the chat. And let me know what comes to mind when you hear the word money. So it's the first thing that crosses your mind. All right, I know it may be difficult to unmute, et cetera. So I know for me, bills come to mind, savings come to mind, wanting to go on a trip comes to mind. So those are all different kinds of things that may come to mind. And the reason I asked this, the reason that we have this icebreaker is because it directly ties in to our first objective. And that first objective is examining our money values and habits. So the reason we're going to talk about this is because spending money does not exist in a vacuum. So there are reasons why we spend and don't spend that go beyond rational explanations that we all do what's in our best interest. If that was the case, no one would have debt. Everyone would be saving and spending exactly to meet their financial goals without any difficulty. So the reality is that our spending, saving, and giving decisions are influenced by our money values and attitudes and habits. And really understanding and learning what those values and habits are will allow us to better understand our behaviors and to determine our priorities and what changes we need to make. I see we have a couple of answers here. So Kathleen said stress, stuff, going back to the chat, she said stress. Ashley, stuff I never have enough of, right? For the money, security, perfect. Those are all things that are very, very topical, and that is why we're focused on this here. So when we think of money attitudes and values, this is kind of like what your attitudes or monies would be about anything in your life. And this particularly, when it comes to money, it's a belief, often subconscious, that an item or service is important to us. These values and attitudes can really shape our spending decisions. The only way to manage them is to acknowledge them. And if they are not serving us, to change them. If they are serving us, to continue using them. So examples can be like the type of car or the type of house or views on donating or anything else, any other kinds of values and attitudes that you may have when it comes to money. So those beliefs that you have around money and what you need and what you want. Habits are the other side. So this is routine spending patterns or automatic spending decisions. And this is our actions. So how are we acting with our money? Again, this needs to be acknowledged. And this is also something that can be changed if we find that it is not to our benefit. So those benefits, those habits can be things that are automatic to us or things that we've just gotten really used to. So if you're going out to work or you're going out to do something outside, making lunch, eating out, saving in a jar, whatever it happens to be, all those things can be habits. So for chat number 2, what would you all, and I know this is being recorded, so I understand people may not want to put their particular money values out there. You can put your own or any other ones that you think of, but what would you say are some examples of money values? And again, you can add it to the chat or you can unmute yourself, whatever you prefer. Okay, so some money values or attitudes can be, like we were saying, things around what you might want to spend, right? Like what you think is important, what matters to you. So one value that I always think is interesting is tithing. There are some people who, regardless of how much money they have coming in or out, have a very strong belief in tithing. And you know, it is not, what you want to do is say, okay, if this is a value that is so important to you, how else can we work with your goals and your budget so that you can continue keeping that value that is so important to you? All right, so we have somebody came in. Donating funding to an organization whose values, pet or horse rescue, align with my own, and which will leave 100 or at minimum 90% going to the animals. Very good. Very good. So that's exactly the other kinds of values that we're talking about here. Perfect. Thank you. Now, how about habits? What would you say are some habits that you can think of either for yourself or for other people? Saving from each paycheck, very good. Putting a little bit in savings with every check, very, very good. Yes, that is a really amazing, wonderful habit that will help you going forward, and making it automatic is what's going to help you continue. So very good examples. Thank you. So here are just a couple other examples. So this can span any spending or saving category. So even like clothing. So we want to make sure that we don't demonize any particular value. A value does not necessarily equate with a negative financial decision. Oh, so we have more here. Regular monthly bills automatically taken out as to remain consistent and keep my credit score good, automatically saving money from each paycheck. Very good. For a special event. Very good. Exactly. So other examples here, like for example, if you were to say something like clothing, buying brand name versus thrifted, and then the habit would be buying clothes on sale or when they're, new every season. For food, same kinds of things. So saving money by cooking at home versus someone whose value is more focused on the convenience of having the food be quickly available because they have so many things to do. And the habits would be getting into the habit of ordering or meal planning. So those are a couple more examples. So next, I kind of want to talk a little bit about what shapes our money values and our habits. In part because this will help you get a better understanding of what your habits are, where they come from, what your values and habits are and where they come from, and also what are the things that you can shift and change and adjust. And then what are the things that for you really are kind of integral to who you are, and that you really have to just find other ways to move money around, increase income or decrease expenses. So what shapes your money values and habits can include your personality, your family, personal experiences, society, community, and culture, religion and spiritual beliefs, and media. So personality. So these are some things to really think about. Do you tend to spend under stress? Do you feel like you should be able to spend money on something because you work hard or you are doing everything you can for whatever particular reason? Are you a risk taker when it comes to investing things? Or are you the kind of person that's going to save at all costs, regardless of the impact that may have on your ability to take care of your current needs? Your family. So what did you see within your own family? Did you see bills organized and managed on a weekly basis? Or was this more of a situation where bill time was incredibly stressful and led to a lot of family fights? Was there something secretive? Was the family secretive about spending? So did you see one parent hiding spending from another and asking you to participate in hiding the information? Or were purchases acknowledged and out in the open with family? And again, the reason for looking at these things is because our behaviors come from somewhere. They are shaped from somewhere. So if we can get a better understanding of why we're doing the things we're doing, then we can better address them and manage them and deal with them so that we're doing things that are in our best interest. Personal experiences as well. So the way that you earned your first dollar and how it felt, what happened the first time that you got a credit card or if you got a loan, what your experience has been like with checking accounts, or if you've done well with budgeting or if you haven't. So does budgeting work for you? When it comes to society, community, and culture, this is incredibly personal. It's going to be very different for different people, but there are, depending on your particular culture and community, some people may think, well, a wedding, I can get married in my backyard. Somebody else will say that's unacceptable. like there's a certain way that these things have to be done. Same things for celebrating holidays and birthdays, property ownership. So for example, my grandparents think I'm a crazy person for living on my own and not living with my parents, or the importance of saving. So all of these things also are things you have to take into consideration. Religion and spiritual teaching. So we talked about this a little bit. This could be a wide range of messages, from minimal involvement to expectations of significant financial contributions. So tithing is often personal and private donation, but some religious groups prefer more public displays. This can also not just affect some of your habits and behaviors, but all the messages that you get, right? So this idea, some potential messages could be God helps those who help themselves, or have faith in God will provide. Those things are going to affect the way that you view money and you view what it is that you have to do, and affects your behavior. Exactly, Kathleen. So Kathleen mentioned a homeownership experience and not going that way again. So this is the reality, is the value that you would put on something like homeownership is going to be strongly influenced by a previous experience, regardless of what other people may or may not tell you. And that's why it's important to also be aware of your values as being legitimate and important and making a difference, but those experiences will have an impact. So one reason that it's really important to look at the values and habits is because sometimes we can find that certain habits, which are based on certain values, aren't serving us. So when that happens, it can feel very difficult to change the behavior, because it's not just changing a behavior, it's changing a habit, which we all know is difficult to do, but it can also be changing or adjusting a value. But this is like the work that we all have to do so that we can meet our financial goals. So here are a couple examples. So somebody may have a value around owning the newest technology. The habit may be that as soon as the high-tech item comes out, you purchase it. If this works for you, you don't necessarily have to change it. But if you are not meeting your goals and you find that this is something that needs to shift, this is where you can really investigate that value and think about how it fits in terms of your priorities with the other values that you have, and then potentially make that change of buying used items or waiting for things that are on sale. That change is only going to happen because you're aware of the value that you have, and the fact that it might need to change. Otherwise, generally speaking, people won't make those changes. Same thing with like the convenience of buying food. So if you're just in a habit at this point of buying snacks out every day when you're on your way to or from work or activities or whatever other things you're doing, that's just what that is the value, that is what's most important to you. Is it serving you? Is it helping you? Where does it rank in your priorities? If it's something that is very important to you, you can change something else. But if this isn't as important, this may be another place where you can kind of make that change and make that shift. So here you would go from a value of the convenience of buying food out, the habit of buying snacks out every day, and then the change being packing those lunches or setting a budget for food out using the envelope method. So that brings us to our second objective, which is setting goals. So now that you are aware of the underlying money values and habits and how they influence your spending, you will want to take a minute to use that information to address your financial goals. And setting goals can be really helpful because it can help you really focus in on your priorities and motivate you to create and stick to a budget or a spending plan. So sometimes we may feel really overwhelmed by everything that we have to do when it comes to our finances. And this is a way to break things down into digestible bites so that you can start getting to the crux of the issue and really getting into your goals. Again, the financial goals don't just happen. You need to have an endpoint, and this can be a way to try to get those things started. And again, any goals that you have should really be aligned with your values. And here, your values are your values, not your sister's values, not an employer's values, not a coach's values, but the things that matter to you and are important to you. Your goals should be based on what matters to you. So the best way to go about starting with those goals is to set SMART financial goals. Some of you may be familiar with SMART goals already. If you are, I apologize for repeating this information. For those of you who aren't, you want to make sure that your goals are specific and you state exactly what is to be done with the money involved. Measurable, so you write the exact dollar amount or as close to the exact dollar amount as you can. Attainable, so how will this be reached? And this often is determined by a budget. It should be realistic. So again, you don't want to reach for something that is really not attainable. And it should be time bound. So you really need to state when the goal needs to be reached. So here's an example of a financial goal that isn't a SMART goal. So it says my goal is to rent an apartment next year. That's a fine goal, but you probably won't get very far. So if you all want in the chat to let me know, why do you think that this isn't a SMART goal? Exactly, Kathleen. There's no specificity in time, how much rent, or where. So this isn't really the best kind of goal. It's difficult to know what if you've met this goal when in next year, right? So after using the SMART acronym, we could put in this information. So here we have, my goal is to save $1,200 for my renting deposit by saving $100 from my monthly paycheck for the next 12 months. This is specific. Pay the rent deposit, first and last month's rent. Measurable, the amount of money. Attainable, assuming that this is based on that they did a budget or are working within their budget for this, so that an individual can set aside $100 a month. Realistic, again, this would be based on the current paycheck and their budget, and it is time bound. So there are a couple of strategies for keeping up with your SMART goals. You may want to have a reward system or an accountability partner. Sometimes that can really help keep you accountable, help keep you on track, because this is more public. The more public you make your goal, the more you feel like you have to actually follow through with it, especially if it's something that you're not particularly jazzed about doing. You want to create action steps along with the SMART goal. So you may have your goal, but how are you going to make that goal happen? Where's the money going to come from, right? Are you going to spend less? Are you going to take that money and put it into savings? What are you going to spend less on? And those can be smaller goals, but you want to create those action steps. You want to start with short-term goals, and you want to start with little goals. So this is, again, kind of the behavioral economics that we discussed in the beginning about values and habits. This is another part of that. Motivation works by proving yourself that you can do something. So if the smaller the goal, the more goals that you accomplish, the more motivation you will feel. That is the way motivation works. So if you can set small little goals that you can accomplish, you will work your way up to feeling stronger and more able to then meet bigger goals. examine why past goals were successful. This is another one of those things. Usually, sometimes we think we can't do something and we can. We just forgot because we focus on the things that we didn't do rather than the things that we have been able to do and the successes that we've had. And then creating a spending plan or a budget so that you can really get your finances in order to make that goal happen. So our third objective here is to really get into what the spending plans can be and what the budgets can look like. And again, part of the reason for this budget and the spending plan is if you have a goal, you don't really know how achievable it is until you have that spending plan. And also you don't know how to really make it happen and how to move forward. So creating that spending plan or budget is a really good first action step towards working towards any kind of SMART goal, any financial goal. The spending plan can also serve as a tool to help you know where every dollar is going rather than not knowing. So sometimes we think we know where our money is going, but we don't really, or we have an idea of what's happening, but we're not really aware. So this is another way to really get yourself connected to the reality of your situation so that you can really pursue the goals that you have. So there are a few things to consider in a spending plan. The first thing you want to think about is income. And this is income from all sources. The second would be expenses. These would be variable expenses, so expenses that can change from month to month, which could be things like utilities. My BG&E bill is different every month, or any other things that are changing. Fixed, so if you're paying rent or if you have a mortgage, those are good examples of a fixed expense. And you don't want to forget those periodic expenses. So for some people, and this is going to be different, all of these will be different for everyone, depending on your particular situation. But some examples of periodic expenses would be, let's say you and a partner have a car and you have to pay a certain amount of car insurance every 6 months. That's a periodic expense. Or you have gifts that you plan to give to folks during the winter holidays. That's also a periodic expense. You want to document all of those different kinds of things within the expenses so that your spending plan is accurate. You can really take everything into consideration, and you don't miss things that will then make it difficult for you to follow through and pay everything. And then you also want to include savings in there. So depending on how tight your budget is and how much your income and expenses are, at first it could potentially feel a little daunting to try to save, but things happen. So emergency savings are really important. And then we all have our financial goals, whatever those may be. Those are usually things that need to be funded. You'll want to really be aware of your needs versus your wants. So this is a place that can be really interesting if you're having conversations with friends or family. Often people will try to tell you what your needs and your wants are. Your needs and your wants are your needs and your wants. I have a family friend who is a single mom who was told that she should, by someone, that having a streaming service was a want. And she said she would have a very difficult time with her children if she didn't have any streaming services available. To her, it was a need. And she cut out a lot of other things and got a little bit of a side gig to make sure she could afford that and still save, because it was something she needed in her life in her current situation. But you want to be very aware, what are the things that you need and the things that you want. When you're creating categories for your spending plan, you want to make sure that the categories are relevant to you. So the categories that are relevant to your cousin or your neighbor or your coworker or whoever may not necessarily be relevant to you. So you really want to focus here and make sure that these categories are relevant to you and are specific to you. And the last thing is that you want to use a relevant tool. So whether that is something online, an app, whether this is some kind of a journal, whether this is using envelopes, you want to use a tool that makes sense for you, that will work with the goals that you have in mind. So again, going back to income. Income is all income. So regular income. So if you are working, it would be the wages that you're making. If you are unable to work and you are receiving SSI or SSDI and SSI, you can consider that your income, because it is not restricted in any way. Extra income are often things that are occasional and income that's restricted. So for example, if you were receiving food stamps or SNAP benefits, that's something that might be considered extra income because you can only spend it on food and on certain things. It can't be spent on everything. If you have an occasional side job or side gig, that would be considered extra income. But you want to make sure to consider everything, consider all of your income. You also want to think about whether this is going to be the same every month, depending on the kind of work that you do or what kind of income you have coming in. It may be different month to month. And again, you want to specify if certain income is restricted, because that will make a difference when you're making your budget or your spending plan. When it comes to expenses, you want to kind of guesstimate what your expenses will be, and then you want to actually track your expenses and make a comparison. So first, what you'll want to do is identify the categories of expenses. So it could be rent or mortgage, or if you're not paying for housing, then that would not be something that you'd put in there. Groceries, pets, healthcare, again, whatever categories make sense for you based on what your expenses are. It could be G&E could be in there, whatever is relevant for you in your specific situation. You'll want to estimate how much you spend in each category, right? So for example, maybe your rent's $890, maybe it's $500, whatever it is. Groceries, what is the average amount that you're spending a month? If you have a pet, how much would that be averaging a month? If you're paying for healthcare, how much is that averaging for you? So you'll want to take all of that into consideration. And then what you want to do is you want to actually track your spending for at least a month in a journal or in whatever device makes sense for you, to see what your actual expenses are. Sometimes we really miscategorize how much we're spending on things. And the only way to really know is to really track every dollar that we're spending. So this is something that we'll then want to do, is track those actual expenses. And the last thing that can be really helpful is to really document the frequency of bill payments. So what bill is coming due when, and how often are you getting those bills? This will kind of get you kind of a baseline of what your expenses are. Once you've done that, step 3 is going to be comparing those expenses. So if you have what your estimates were at the beginning of the month, and then you've actually tracked your expenses for a month. And again, remember, there are going to be some things, there are periodic expenses, and you can average those out and add them in to that actual expenses per month. But what you're going to do is you're going to look and say, okay, do your actual spending match your estimated spending numbers? Did you forget any type of expenses? So you may have thought you added all of the categories and you realized that you didn't. or you thought you added all of the different expenses and you didn't even realize you were spending money in certain ways. Did you have the money, enough money to cover all of your expenses? Or did you have leftover income after the expenses were paid? And then tracking, again, did you track your expenses weekly, biweekly, monthly? And part of the reason to look at that is we often forget things if we wait to do them later. So that's another reason to really look at how you're tracking them and what works for you. From there, you'll use the actual number from at that point. What you'll do is you'll use the actual number from tracking as your target for every category in your spending plan. So before I go forward, I wanted to check in and see if there were any questions or anybody had any questions they wanted to add in the chat or any comments on what we've covered so far. Yes, I will be sending the slide deck to Ashley to share with the participants. There are also, I tried to make these slides accessible. Most of them had a lot of images and graphics, so I had to take them all out, and I tried to do high contrast, so the black and white. There are 2 slides that are important that I just wasn't able to make very accessible. So I'm going to be creating accessible Excel sheets for those. And I will be sending that along with the slide deck. So you all will have those things. And then there'll also be a recording. So all of that will be available to you all. Very welcome. Okay. So now here we have from there, again, we've looked at the income, we've looked at the expenses, kind of gotten a handle on those things. So now what we want to do is give you another quick reminder about those periodic expenses. So the reason I say this is because inevitably it's really easy to forget these things. And you don't, especially if you're paying for car insurance, for example, once every 6 months, if you don't have it in your budget, if you had it and then you don't have it in your budget, you can really feel that difference. So you really want to think about that. And again, those periodic expenses are going to be different for everyone. So you really want to be connected to what your periodic expenses are. Here I put something down. It's just a very simple example, which is sometimes we don't think about holiday gifts as periodic expenses. So let's say you're going to be giving, Jane hopes to get gifts for everyone in her family for the winter holidays. She estimates spending $200 total in November. So really starting in May, how much money would she have to set aside a month to have that 200 saved by November? So if those are 6 months, that would be $50 a month. She really needs to put that $50 a month into her spending plan, into her budget. And yes, exactly. Car registration, perfect example. Memberships, magazine subscriptions, all of those things. And I'll tell you right now that depending on your particular situation and what you're spending money on, sometimes people really forget all of the different things that they're paying for and may not even be using. So if you're paying for a number of different subscriptions, you can also think about, am I even using this? Is this even something that is benefiting me anymore? And this can help you make sure that you have that on point, especially for subscriptions that are automatic. You may sign up for something for a free month of something and not realize that it never ended, and that $20 or $15 or $10 has been coming out every month, and you just didn't notice it on your credit card statement or on your bank statement. So that's money that's gone, so that you could use for something else. So it can be really helpful to look at all of those things. So thank you for the examples. Another thing we want to make sure to include along with everything else is savings. Along with whatever expenses you may have day to day or may have over a period of time, you may have a goal, a financial goal, right? So going back to those SMART goals, maybe there was a trip you wanted to take. Maybe there was something that you need to purchase, not even want, but are really need to purchase. Maybe you are currently working and you're thinking about additional money that may come to you in retirement. There are so many different things that are happening. You really need to incorporate those savings into that spending plan, and try to pay yourself first. So again, it could be anything: the rental deposit, the trip, emergencies. I can't say enough about saving for emergencies, having that emergency fund. With COVID, we can see how many people's employment was affected, and having that emergency fund saves some people. Or clothes for a special event or anything else that you may need. So the money, and again, the money you save now will save you later. It potentially really can save you later. So you really want to make sure to include that in that savings plan, spending plan, or budget. So another thing you want to make sure that you're doing is prioritizing. So once you have your expenses, you have your income, you understand what your expenses are, you are looking at your periodic expenses along with everything else, you're considering your savings. Most of us will need to prioritize. You can always spend less and save more for certain things, cut different things out. But if you have goals, most of us often will need to prioritize to get different goals met. So you really need to focus on prioritizing the things that are most important to you. I know I repeat myself. I'm saying that because often people will tell you what you should prioritize, and you need to prioritize the things that matter to you and that matter to your well-being based on the needs that you have. One thing I will say is that oftentimes people will have certain habits that may or may not be serving them, that they just aren't going to change or are not ready to change, right? So we have to be ready to make those changes. So let's say that you're just not ready to take that daily coffee or snack to stop spending the money on the daily coffee or snack. Maybe you think that you should, maybe you think that it's fine, but let's say that you think that it would be beneficial for you to do that, but you're just not ready. If you're not ready, you're not ready. Put it into your budget. So add it to your spending plan. If you can see what you're spending, how much you're spending on that coffee and the snack run, you can decide if that is going to be something that is important to you and that you will get rid of a subscription, or if you don't have any other expenses you can get rid of, are you going to find some additional income to pay for those things? So even if it's a behavior that you plan to change, but you just can't change right now, you're just not in the mindset to do it, or you don't plan to change, it's just something that you know yourself and you know this is something you're going to continue to do. Don't ignore it because you feel bad or guilty, or you feel like other people think it's a waste of money. Put it into your budget, put it into your spending plan, move things around, look at what your priorities are, and then really over time, if you continue to look at your spending plan and see that you're spending a certain amount of money on these things, you'll decide if that's a priority or not for you. But the worst thing you can do is feel bad about a particular habit. Keep it out of your spending plan or your budget because you feel some kind of guilt or shame around it, and then pretend like it's not happening because it is happening. So even if it's something that you have a little shame around or you're unsure about or whatever the case may be, put it in your spending plan because you're spending the money. And that way you can make decisions based on what else is there. And you can decide as you move forward if this is a priority for you or not. So spending plan tools or budget tools, there are a lot of different ways to do this. So there are one thing is an envelope method. Some people can do this for like certain smaller goals. So if you had envelopes that you mark in whatever way, maybe folding the edges in a certain way for a certain goal, however it is that you're going to be marking it, to say, okay, this is my savings for this particular item or this particular thing. And doing that for both the savings and for both the spending and for the income, like money coming in and money going out. Some people do that, or use a notebook or journal. There are a lot of accessible Excel or Google Sheets that you can use. There are a lot of templates. There's computer software, online tools and apps, and simple spending plans. So it really depends on what makes the most sense for you, what you feel comfortable with, what you are going to actually use. So yes, what you're going to actually use and what's going to work for you. There are a number of fintech apps. I just wrote 4 here. There are an exponential number. So Rocket Money, Mint, Chime, You Need a Budget. There are very many that you can start looking into. But you want to have a couple. I can't tell you what you should or shouldn't use, but I can tell you that you may want to make some considerations. So does it meet your accessibility needs? Is this something that is actually going to be useful and helpful for you? Is it free? Or is this something that you now have to put in your budget that you're paying for something to help you create a spending plan? What information are they gathering? What is the security level if you're providing personal financial information? And what are the reviews? So you want to just make sure that you do your homework if you're going to be using any fintech apps. This is a little bit hard to read. This is a sample monthly budget spreadsheet. This is one of the things that I'm going to create an accessible spreadsheet and give to Ashley to share with you all. But the idea here, there are 4 columns. A category column, expected amount, actual amount, and difference after the month. And then within the category, there are a couple of different major areas. So you have income, and then this would be where you would put the categories that make sense for you. So if you had salary and wages, that could be something. If you had public benefits, that could be something. If there was other income, that could be another row. Then expenses. So again, you want to really focus on the expenses that make sense for your particular situation. So for somebody, it could be rent, BG&E. This person doesn't have a car, so they have a bus pass, groceries, clothing, medical. This is where phone and savings. And this is what the things we were talking about before. This person wants to have some fun and they're going to go out occasionally. They're going to do these things. So they're adding it to their budget. And they know, even though they've tried to quit smoking a bunch of times, that they are purchasing cigarettes. So they are going to add that to their budget, because if they don't, then that is money that is being spent that's not being taken into consideration. The budget is going to be off and it's not going to be accurate. It will be more difficult to really see what money you have and what money you don't have. Like I said, the first category was the categories, the different topics. The second column was the expected amount. The third column is the actual amount. So this person had salary, wages, $1,000 as expected. They would then see how much they actually spent. What was the actual amount? And then the difference at the end of the month. And this, keeping the actual and difference, can really help you see where you have, where you're, what you think you're spending or making is different. This particular spreadsheet doesn't have a lot of spaces for unexpected, anything unexpected. nor does it have periodic expenses. So those are things that this person might want to add in. But again, I'll send you this in a format that you all can actually really, that is more accessible if you are low vision or blind, so that you can actually, a screen reader can really read it, or you know, the contrast is better so that you're able to see it better. So again, this just kind of was outlining what this was. So the 4 columns with the category, expected amount, actual amount, difference after the month, and then the rows, which were the income, expenses, and net. Expenses included savings. But again, you would make those categories be whatever is relevant for you. Another thing that some people do is they use a calendar to look at their cash flow. What you would do is you would gather all of the information about all income coming in and all bills being paid. And then you'd add incoming funds on the date money came in throughout the month. So for example, you would put plus $200 on the square for, would be added to 503. Let's say you were getting paid that day. You would note when bills were paid on the days that the money was going out. And then at the end of the week, you could have a balance. Depending on how useful that calendar feature might be for you, this can be a nice way to put everything together as well. I recognize that this slide is not particularly accessible. So this is another one that I will be making a different version of, but this has a calendar for May 2020. It's just a random month. On the right side, it says the bills. So it has $900 rent due on the 31st, 50 utilities due on the 19th, 120 cable TV due on the 11th, 75 groceries per week, 100 cell phone on the month due on the 16th, 100 credit card bill due on the 10th, $10 bus tokens per week starting the 9th, take out $10 for fun each Saturday. So this person has started putting that together here. And what they've added so far is the income that they have coming in. So they're getting paid on Fridays and you can see the money that's coming in. You can also do a cash flow statement as an Excel sheet without using a calendar at all. So I'll also look to send that information to you all, but that is something that can be helpful. Sometimes you have the money to pay all your bills, but it doesn't feel like you do because your bills are due before you get paid or your bills are due right next to each other in such a way that it doesn't make sense with the way that you're actually getting your income. So this kind of cash flow, either spreadsheet or calendar, can kind of help you see that. And you can always reach out to the companies, the lenders, and ask to change a bill, right? So if you're getting paid on the 5th every month, whether that's income, social security, wages, social security, whatever it happens to be, and certain bills are coming in on the 3rd, you could request that that bill get moved to a different day. Exactly. Thank you, Kathleen. Some companies will move your due dates. Exactly. So, and that may be part of the issue you're having that you'll find when you do this. You have the money. It's just when the money comes in and when the money goes out, don't match. So it feels like you don't have any money. So some companies will move things. You can ask to change things. You can also ask to negotiate things. So that's something to be aware of. And I'll send a more accessible version of this to everybody. So that is pretty much it for today. I did want to leave a few minutes if anybody had any questions or any comments or wanted me to touch on anything else. If you would prefer to send me an email, you can always get in contact with me. I will send that information. Ashley has that information she can share with everyone when she shares the slides, but I can also tell you right now, my email is Christina. Christina, CHRISTINA, at cashmd.org. And again, Ashley will share my contact information and the slides. So in the 5 minutes we have left, I wanted to see if anybody had any questions or any comments or anything else that I might be able to help you with. Feel free to add to the chat or to unmute yourself.
Thank you so much, Christina, for being here and doing this program for us. We really appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley. And thank you, Kathleen. Yes, the hidden charges thing. Hidden charges, hidden fees. I mean, we're not talking about retirement now, but that's one of the things we always talk about with retirement savings too, is all of the hidden charges and fees. And the things that hit you when you don't expect them, with everything else. So those are things to really be focused on so that you can save that money for your goals.
Definitely. Well, again, thank you so very much. It's very much appreciated. A copy of this recording will be posted on YouTube for easy access. And I will be sending out a copy of the slides and Christina's contact information to everyone who registered. So if you came late or if you had a question after we log off, no worries. We will make sure that they get answered. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming. I'm going to go ahead and close this out now. Be sure to join us again in 2 weeks when we have our next class all about credit. So yay, credit. All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you. You all have a great evening.